Imagine this. The sun beats down on Ouagadougou, the capital of Burkina Faso, where dust swirls in the air and life moves at a rhythm of resilience and struggle. The narrow streets are alive with the cries of vendors, the sputter of motorbikes, and the constant hum of survival. In one of those streets, tucked away between rows of tiny shops, stands a mechanic's workshop, nothing more than a corrugated iron roof held up by wooden poles, with the ground stained by oil and the walls blackened by years of smoke and grease. Inside, amidst the clatter of tools and the smell of fuel, a little boy wrestles with a car tire twice his size. His small hands are covered in grime, his shirt torn and hanging from his thin shoulders, and sweat rolls down his face as he struggles to tighten a rusty bolt. He is no more than 10 years old, yet his body already bears the weight of a man's labor. It was here that Captain Ibrahim Traoré, President of Burkina Faso, happened to pass by one ordinary afternoon. But what happened next was far from ordinary. This was not a staged event, not a moment prepared for cameras or politics. It was raw, unscripted humanity. His convoy slowed as he spotted the boy through the dusty haze. At first, it seemed like just another scene in a nation where poverty is as common as the scorching sun. But something in the boy's struggle struck him deep. Perhaps it was the way the child bit his lip in determination, refusing to give up despite his trembling arms. Perhaps it was the memory of his own boyhood, working with calloused hands long before he ever dreamed of leading a nation. The convoy came to a halt, soldiers puzzled as their leader stepped out of the armored vehicle. The streets fell silent. People stared in disbelief as the president, dressed in his simple fatigues, walked directly toward the mechanic shop. The boy didn't notice at first. He was too busy fighting with the stubborn bolt, too absorbed in his task. Only when the shadow of the tall, soldierly figure fell across him did he look up, his wide eyes meeting the piercing gaze of the man who ruled his country. Fear flickered in the boy's face. He probably expected a scolding or thought he was in trouble. After all, what would a president want with a child covered in grease and dirt? But instead of harshness, Ibrahim Traoré knelt down. Yes, the leader of a nation, surrounded by guards and power, lowered himself to the level of a child laborer. He smiled and in a gentle voice asked, "What are you doing, petit frère?" "Little brother." The boy's lips trembled, and he muttered that he was helping his uncle fix cars, that he had to work to support his family. His voice was quiet, almost ashamed, as if confessing a sin. Traoré listened, nodding slowly, his expression unreadable, yet filled with a weight that everyone around could feel. He did not rush. He did not lecture. Instead, he placed his hand on the boy's shoulder and asked, "Do you go to school?" The boy shook his head. His family couldn't afford it. His father was gone. His mother struggled to feed the younger children, and so he worked. The crowd that had gathered around fell silent, every ear straining to hear the exchange. A lump formed in the throats of many who watched. For in that single boy was the story of thousands across the land, children forced to trade books for tools, dreams for survival. And here stood the president, face to face with that reality, not in reports or statistics, but in the trembling voice of a child. Traoré sighed, then did something no one expected. He took the greasy wrench from the boy's hand. The president of Burkina Faso, who commands soldiers and makes decisions of war and peace, crouched down and began to loosen the stubborn bolt himself. The boy watched in stunned silence, his mouth open as if he couldn't believe his eyes. The crowd gasped, some even raising their phones to record. But Traoré wasn't doing it for cameras. He was showing the boy something profound, that his life mattered, that his struggle was seen, that he was not invisible. After a few moments, he tightened the bolt properly and handed the wrench back. "You are strong," he told the boy, "but strength should build your future, not steal it." Then he stood and looked around at the people watching. His voice grew firm, carrying the weight of authority. He spoke not to the cameras, not to officials, but directly to the people gathered on that dusty street. He said that no child in Burkina Faso should have to choose between survival and education, that a nation's future is written not in its speeches, but in the hands of its children. And those hands should hold pencils and books, not tools meant for men. The boy's uncle, nervous and ashamed, stepped forward to explain. He said he had no choice, that the boy wanted to help, that life was hard. Traore put his hand on the man's shoulder and told him he understood. He did not condemn, for he knew the struggles of ordinary families. Meanwhile, across the country, the story ignited conversations. Parents, teachers, and community leaders began demanding more support for education, more opportunities for children. It was as if the boy's struggle had unlocked something in the nation's soul. And Traore himself used the moment as fuel to push for reforms, to emphasize that the true wealth of Burkina Faso is not in its gold or its land, but in the minds of its young people. Critics said it was just one boy, just one act, just one story, but they missed the point. Leadership is not about saving everyone at once. It is about showing what is possible, about setting an example that inspires thousands more. And in that dusty workshop, Traore had lit a flame that no criticism could extinguish. Years from now, perhaps that boy will look back on the day when the president noticed him, when the course of his life shifted from the grind of survival to the path of opportunity. Perhaps he will become a teacher, an engineer, a leader. Perhaps he will carry forward the same lesson he received, that even in the smallest struggles, greatness can be born if someone believes in you. And those who witnessed it will remember too. They will remember how a powerful man stopped everything to kneel beside a child. They will remember how, for a moment, the walls of power and poverty disappeared, replaced by simple human connection. They will remember that leadership is not measured in speeches or uniforms, but in the courage to act when no one expects it. So when the world asks who Ibrahim Traoré is, hero, leader, or just another politician, tell them this story. Tell them about the dusty mechanic shop, the struggling boy, and the president who picked up a wrench. Tell them how a single act of kindness can ripple through a nation, turning despair into hope and hope into change. Tell them that sometimes the greatest revolutions begin not with guns or protests, but with compassion. Because in the heart of Burkina Faso, on an ordinary afternoon, a little boy's struggle reminded a nation of its greatest truth, that the future is built not by the powerful, but by those who believe in the power of one small act to change everything. And that is why the people still whisper about that day. That is why they say you wouldn't believe what Ibrahim Traoré did, until you see the boy, now with books in his hands proving that belief can indeed move mountains.